working out our video, but I thought I'd make a couple of announcements. If you look at the announcement sheet you've got in front of you, there is a entrepreneur luncheon. It's an innovation luncheon. It's going to be November the 18th. This is a luncheon that is for entrepreneurs in Hopkins County, and what we'd like to do is honor you. We have a guest speaker coming in formally from the Kaufman Foundation, and this will be a luncheon. There will be a few awards given out during this luncheon, so if you have not made a reservation first, please do so. You can contact Barbara or myself at the office. We've got the contact information on there. If you're an entrepreneur, this luncheon is free. We will be seeking sponsorships from local banks. Each business gets 2 tickets. So if you're interested in coming to this luncheon and learning more about other entrepreneurs in our community, Cameron Cushman is going to be our speaker, and he is phenomenal. He will do a great job. He did many great things through the Kaufman Foundation, and I think y'all find him enjoyable. But anyway, that is going to be November 18th. We also have a LEGO conference, Build, Go, and Grow Regional Entrepreneurship Conference. The information on there is, some of you may be past that, but if you know people that are in the infancy stages of beginning their business, this would be a great conference for them. Without further ado, I will introduce you to our first presenter today, which is Haynie. She is a local Madisonville person, and she has just started her business within the last few weeks. I'll let you tell about your business.
So everybody that's in here is also going, "Aw," right? Because everybody's started their business, so you know that it's a little bit challenging. I'm a nurse practitioner. I've been a nurse practitioner for 7 years. Pediatrics, so I can't see any of you except you, maybe. I see kids from birth to basically 21, though I don't get very many of the older kids. But came from here, grew up in Nortonville, got my degree at Murray State as far as my nursing degree. Worked a little bit of everywhere. Been in the military. My husband and I were both in the Army, active duty, for a while, and so once we came back from there and traveled a few other places and finally settled, I actually worked in the neonatal intensive care at Madisonville, here at Madisonville, as one of the clinical leaders for 5 years. So babies and kids are kind of my thing. That's what I do. That's what God wants me to do, and that's where I am. So I have been at Fort Campbell as a nurse practitioner for 7 years. With a pretty large population, pretty diverse population, and always wanted to do this, but kind of had to get thrust into doing it. I don't know if that's the way it works for some of you all, but was offered a job here locally and thought, wow, I don't have to drive 2 hours every day anymore. And through that, just ended up evolving until now there's Madisonville Pediatrics. So we're located on Herrick Street here in Madisonville, and if anybody doesn't know where that is, if you just drive east towards Walmart, and if you're at Custom Audio, you've missed us. We're right beside Custom Audio behind the hair art building. As far as that goes, like I said, we take appointments, but we also do walk-ins. It's pretty much chief cook and bottle washer for a lot of it, but I do have, as you can see in some of the pictures, I have a little bit of limited staff. I have a great LPN that I worked with in the hospital that I worked with on peds, and in fact she actually worked in the NICU a little bit, which is unusual for LPNs, so she's very good at her job, and she works with me. And then I actually have my daughter as a receptionist part-time. I have, I've had a lot of help from family. I don't know about the rest of you all, but that's how I've survived. Straight into the business. I know we're supposed to talk about, the challenges and everything. To me, it's all been a challenge. I'm sure everybody would probably agree. Funding, that's always a major challenge. I did the entire business plan, mission statement, all of that sort of thing. So I've been that route as well. It's not just, I think sometimes people think you just, oh, I want to do this today, and you open the doors, and that's really not how it works. So went that route, went through economic development and worked with Ruth Ann a lot. Opened about 3 weeks ago and actually had the first week, actually have had 3 and 4 patients every day. Saw some kids on Saturday. That, it helps being from here. It helps initially not having worked in the area, though I was from here, went to South Hopkins, people didn't quite know me, but with family here spread out everywhere, and then people from the NICU that knew me from years ago, that's certainly helped. Because I have some contacts in the hospital, and so I'm on their list as far as a pediatrician. Just for FYI, I'm a nurse practitioner, as I said. I am not a physician by choice. Some people may not realize that. I could have been a physician if I'd chosen to go that route, but I've always been a nurse at heart. So as a nurse practitioner, I have a collaborating physician on paper basically, but I'm not required to have a physician that works with me. So I can do pretty much what most of the local pediatricians do, not diminishing their role as an MD, by the way. But I can order labs and x-rays and things like that. So don't have the capability to do x-rays in my little office. Don't have the capability to do labs right now. That's a very limited, minor type things, but coordinate with Baptist and multi-care and can get results pretty much within an hour or 2 from them. So let's see, what am I missing? Challenges, like I said, funding is a challenge. Everybody thought that because I was female and starting my own business, I could get some help that way. I'm also a military vet, and in fact a Gulf War vet, but that didn't end up being a big plus on the financial end. And so that is, I think, probably most people's initial concern, is trying to get started. And we're there now. In my type of business, of course, I have to deal with insurance companies and things like that as far as actually getting paid by people. So, we're day to day. Has it been approved yet? Do we have a check yet? Okay, we can all keep working now, But, so tomorrow, come on in, we're going to turn the lights on. So as far as actually opening the doors, I have a lot of talented people in my family, and I'm not opposed to hard work. If you might have seen me around town in the last month or so. This is not what I was normally in at that time. Usually it was paint and stain and dust, and I was like, I gotta get something to eat. I'm sitting there eating, looking, pretty rough actually. But we pulled up layers of carpet, and we painted, and we've just done everything that I'm sure everybody else is used to too. I've been particularly blessed. This is not a forum for that, I realize that, but I've been particularly blessed by the Lord all my life, and just things have just fallen into place with me. So the person that I'm renting from, she said, come on in and do your thing for a while, don't worry about paying me this month. So that's an amazing, for those of you that know how hard that is, that's an amazing thing right there. So I love what I do. I'm pretty much a kid. If you come in to see me with your child, the posters are actually mine with the comic books and things like that, and then I'm kind of their level. So, I'm trying to I'll be professional while I'm in here today. I can talk about professional things, but I can also talk about, Wonder Woman and Spider-Man. So, but I just like to relate to people. I can do pretty much, I've taken care of some fairly chronic issues. A lot of people don't realize maybe the scope that we can do, because I've dealt with kids with, cerebral palsy, and in fact some really rare genetic conditions. Having been at Fort Campbell, that was another blessing. It didn't seem so at the time to drive all that way, but I've been exposed to kids from all over the world, and many that have had very, very rare conditions. And I am not a surgeon, I'm not an MD, I don't claim to be, so I do refer out to other providers. So that's another challenge in my business, is networking, and everybody has to do that as well in a different scope. So I've been very familiar with Vanderbilt University from being at Fort Campbell for so many years, and now I'm having to get more familiar with COSARES and UK and Evansville as well. So, as well as all the, I guess I keep talking, I know everybody can relate to all these steps, but you go from being in the kind of a corporate environment and in a military environment for me where you had to do things a certain specific way and you had to go from point A to point B, but they would do it for you. If you went, you didn't have to worry about certain steps. You just went in and did your job. And now I have to worry about everything. So.
How about questions for Amy?
Yeah, I've got one. I see a little bit of a similarity. It sounds like you had practiced in a group environment before. I did as well as a partner in a St. Louis area law firm, and then when trying to start a business initially in Paducah, found that I needed to hang my shingle on my own just to keep bread on the table until we got that going. Not to tell my story, but how was that transition in moving from the group environment to now having your own practice?
Right.
How does that feel different?
It's just a different, that's kind of what I was alluding to. It's just a different, you go from having some backup, so to speak, from having somebody you can bounce ideas off of or questions off of or corporate things that you're required to do. In other words, it's good and bad. So now I can decide if I want to have this at this time or what have you, but also I'm the one that has to decide. And I think that's the major point. There's nobody I can go to say, well, I told so-and-so and it didn't get done. It's all on me now. So that has been a real challenge from every single aspect. So now I have to be involved in billing and everything that I normally wasn't. Right.
Amy, from the time that you determined you were going to open your business, how long did it take you to actually get it up and running? What kind of?
It took me, because I had such a long foundation of experience, it wasn't the medical part that took quite so long. So it was definitely all of the incorporation and things like that. And it took, I'm gonna say it's been at least 2.5, 3 months just to actually open the doors, and then there's still little things out there that I'm finding, but probably 2 to 3 months minimum.
And I know you said that you worked with economic development. What other entities did you work with in getting this set up?
Well, I also talked to or had some meetings with the small business development, I can't think of her title.
Sarah Brown from the SBA.
Sarah Brown from the SBA. And other than that, it was more medical based. It was credentialing companies and things like that. So yeah, most of the research was on me. I didn't really have a mentor. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, thank you for your service. It's just amazing
Oh,
every
thank
time I
you.
run into someone who's had the audacity and the courage to go out and protect us and serve in the military. Second of all, it's almost as impressive to see someone step into the medical field as an independent business in today's environment of insurance billing and programs changing and Obamacare and everything else. Was that a real concern for you opening up your doors, or how did you offset that very real problem which is forcing large doctor's offices to consolidate with hospitals?
Right, that's a good question. It came down to a personal choice. I could have opted to go back to one of the bigger cities around us, try to go back to Fort Campbell or go to Evansville or something like that. But it came down to a choice of quality of life for me. So it's not about, it was definitely very scary, let me put it that way, because I had a government job and I had, 401k and I had all that sort of stuff. So it just came down to, it was just a really, really personal choice. Like, guys, we're gonna have to eat beans and potatoes because I wanna be here. I'm missing all the stuff that I've missed all these years. It's not easy because most people are joining. You look at Jenny Stewart is in a difficult situation right now, and they may be looking for somebody to join with, and of course RMC and Trover and things like that. Another part of that, though, is that I'm a really big believer in personal care. And when you go to those tertiary centers like a Vanderbilt or a Cosaires or even sometimes a Baptist, you're kind of shuffled in and out. And so I like to get to know people, you know, I know you, hey, you know, they can call me on the phone. I can, before I got my doors open, I actually made some house calls, and I thought people were gonna faint, because they said, we can't believe you came out here. But I had seen a couple of them already, and I knew them, so I was thinking, well, let me go. And that was really impressive to people, and they've stayed with me because of that. So I'm just hoping and praying, you know, that I'll be able to last it out.
One of you alluded to this just a little bit. I have a new grandson, the 1st of November. So for the newborn, once we start bringing the baby to you, would you be on call, like, for instance, you know, in the middle of the night, or how does that work?
I'm usually always available.
Yeah,
now, you know, I give people my cell phone number. You know, if you don't get me, you can leave a message and I'll call you back. It's that sort of thing. But new moms are a lot of times like that, you know, so most of the time I can talk them through stuff on the phone, and that's not an issue. Or I can get to the clinic early that morning, or I can stay late, which is another advantage over a big group, because you can't do that a lot of times. So yeah, it's pretty easy. As long as they make contact with me, we'll take care of them.
And what about like they're critically ill for us admitting them to the hospital? Then do they just sit
That's
with
a
the
good question.
hospitals?
You know, I could have admitting privileges, but I chose not to do that because they deal with mainly hospitalists nowadays. Most of the local pediatricians and other private practices don't go and do a lot of that nowadays. So what I do, I did this the other day with St. Mary's, is kind of coordinate that for them. I will call that emergency room or whatever. This is what I have, which they were a little bit surprised, but I'm used to doing that. You know, this is what I have coming in. This is who you need to be looking out for. And then I usually make contact with the family over and over. And I probably would go and see them, but I can't officially do anything with their charts or whatever.
Amy, when we moved here in 2000, and at the time our son, who's now 16, was about 1.5 years. And it wasn't too long before he had his first appointment with Dr. Eve McNeil. And we about fell over the next morning after his appointment and each ensuing appointment, because the phone would ring and it'd be Dr. McNeil calling to say, well, how's our boy? And I say that only to say it sounds like you really believe in that personal connection, that personal touch. And you may do that, you may be doing that. That impressed us. We had come from a much bigger city environment,
Right.
knocked our socks off.
Right. That's a good point. I try to do that. I won't swear that every time you come in I'm going to call you the next day, but I did that with the mom that I had to send to St. Mary's, and she was amazed that we called.
Yeah.
Yes, sir?
I was wondering about your Army service. You talked a little bit about how that it got you accustomed to kind of a process that then you've now had to understand that process no longer exists, the backup that you were talking about.
Right.
But I was wondering about that service. What do you feel like it did to kind of like, particularly prepare you for this? And see, several weeks ago we had a fellow in who had been in the service. He started a brewery, a distillery down in Christian County. But anyway, he seemed very undaunted, kind of in the same way that you do. And I was just wondering if you could speak to that a little bit about.
Well, I went in the military right after high school as a private, and then did some time, and then went to college in between. And so every summer you would go and do your military, and then I was in the reserves and so on and so forth. So when I went to the Gulf War, I was a cadet. I went into ROTC, but I went over as a sergeant. I was enlisted, and I went with my medical unit, my MASH unit. And it just makes you able to prioritize what's super important and what's not, emergency-wise a lot of times. You know, because it teaches you to make a decision. I guess that's the quickest, easiest way to say that.
That's right.
You know, and they'll enforce that over and over. You know, it's like you have to make a decision, even if it's a wrong decision. You have to make a decision. So that is what's helped me in this process. Like, well, I don't know, but this is what we're going to do. And then if it's wrong, I'm going to go back and step back a little bit. And so, and that's what people want, I think, too, when you go in and take care of their kids, especially their kids, you know. Even if you don't know what's going on, as long as you have a plan, or it seems to, so.
That's a great answer.
Well, that kind of leads into my question. I know several nurse practitioners, you know, in different areas and a couple of counties, but how do you plan to grow your business as far as, because what I see is that you're able to do what you can do, okay? And if, God forbid, something happens and you have this business and you aren't able to be there for those patients for a week or 2 weeks. And so I'm looking at, you know, like Baptist and them, they have numerous doctors together. Do you ever see a group of nurse practitioners going
That's
in
a great question.
and working together?
Yes. It's not something that I have explored. Obviously, I don't have that, I've been open 3 weeks, so I don't have that capability right now. But I see that to me, that's gonna be the future for a lot of things. Because number one, there's not enough physicians. There's not enough people going to medical school. Number two, nurse practitioners give really good care, in my opinion.
And they stay local too, don't
They tend to stay local. You know, when I started doing this 7, almost 8 years ago, there weren't very many of us, especially around here. Now, up north, there are already several large nurse practitioner groups that are strictly nurse practitioner ran. But the farther down the coast and south in the country that you get, it's a little more sparse. So, yes, I think that that's a good possibility, and I'm in a unique position being pediatric. I'm the only pediatric certified person around here, but there's a lot of family practice, and we would all work fairly well together. So I see that being a possibility. Right now, I'm praying and crossing my fingers that I don't, hurt anything, or because I'm going to be wheeling it in there or whatever if I have to, because I don't have that capability. But yeah, I see that happening in the future. It's not going to be in a year. It probably won't be for 5 or 10 years because people have to be accepting of that too. But I think that these huge conglomerates of medical care, some of that's going to change in the future. That's what I'm saying. I think you'll see that.
I'm a huge fan of nurse practitioners, and I guess for me, I've never heard of a situation where you could be in practice by yourself and you said you have a doctor on paper or whatever, and that's cool. And I have always I found out early on that, I picked my doctor when I've had to move by the nurse practitioners, that's who I would ask to see it. Because the doctor, even on your annual visit, like always has one foot out the door and has so many things to do, and I found out that the nurse practitioner cared about, like you said, they want to help, and they're eager to get information. Now, having said that, is that a challenge, especially, here in a smaller town where people, the doctor is God and everyone listens to what the doctor says? And is that your biggest challenge, or do you have something that?
It's my challenge getting them in the door. Once they're in the door and they work with me for a little bit, they can usually see a difference. And it's not that doctors are bad, by the way. I'm not here to bash MDs at all. It's a different mindset. It's a different type of education and a different type of practice. They used to always say that in nursing school, they would say that doctors treat the disease and nurses treat the patient. And that really kind of flows over because we're really holistic. I end up dealing with the parents as much as I do with the child. So I think some of that's a challenge because they're steeped in, I go to Dr. So-and-so, that's where I'm going. But once they see how we operate a little bit differently, we're kind of more family oriented, then it's not so hard, if that makes sense. Just get them in the door.
How have you been accepted in the medical community here locally? I know you said St. Thomas, and what's been your experience with the local medical both Baptist and multi-care. Are they accepting, is there a big hurdle there, or?
Well, it's kind of interesting, in the military realm at Fort Campbell, I was very, very accepted. I was another provider. Nobody even asked, what about Dr. So-and-so? You know, around here, when you go to apply for jobs, like I've talked to multi-care, I've talked to Baptist, they're very, very MD fit, you know, oriented. Now, it's not that way with the ancillary services, so physical therapy, occupational therapy, referrals to Vanderbilt or COSERS or whatever, they're fine, usually. But occasionally I do get, well, you know, who's the doctor that I should put them with? And I have to tell them again, I'm the provider. There's not a doctor. He's in Lexington, but there's not, you know. So sometimes it is a challenge, more so here actually than it was when I was at Fort Campbell, but it's just education, I think.
I've got one final question. Speaking of growth of your business and your practice, have you thought about being able to step up and have pediatrics and care for the parents as well? And how are you going to grow that?
Me personally, you mean, or having someone?
Or have someone in that organization?
Having it in that capacity. I have been asked that question for 7 years, usually by the parents. Can I come and see you? And since I have opened the doors here, I have had so many adults say, they didn't realize I was pediatrics at first. The sign, I guess, didn't. So I had them ask me, you know, can I make an appointment? And they're like 50. And I'm like, not really, because I don't take care of you all. It's not that I could go back to school. That means another additional probably year and a half. As nurse practitioners, FYI, we are always required to be board certified. Physicians are not necessarily required to be board certified. They go through medical school and their residency, and they can take a board, but it's up to their governing, whoever they work for, to decide if they have to. Nurse practitioners are mandated to. So we will always be board certified by a national board over our specialties. So I personally don't see me doing that, just because I have enough on my plate and I don't want to go back to school right now. But I can imagine merging with somebody at some point, you know, so that we can say, hey, you know, so-and-so's here with, you know, their child and they're sick. Can you? Now, granted, I will tell you, I'm not going to lie, if mom says, I get this all the time, can you just look in my ear if I'm, you know, because I don't want to go to that. And, you know, I have to be real careful with that, you know, because I can't overstep my bounds or anything, but I can certainly look in somebody's ear and say, you know, I think you're okay, you can wait 48 hours or whatever. But that's between all of us. So don't everybody come in, you know, but, so I can give them a little advice, you know. I don't certainly tell them, hey, you sound awful, you're coughing and you need to be seen.
Amy, thank you so very much.
Thank you.